The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Welcome back to Cheshire East again, everybody. Now here's an interesting question to start this episode off. If you have a local shop in your village, do you know how old it is? I bet you it can't be much older than this one right here. That one dates back to 1705. You can find it on a big roundabout in the parish of Chelford. Chelford, Throat or Channel Ford. Welcome back to Cheshire East again, everybody. I just couldn't stay away for long. This weekend we have two more to tick off between Knutsford and Macclesfield. It's almost as if I just carried on where I left off in Snelson. Anyway, this is Chelford, the biggest village we've so far covered in these parts, and it's quite the eclectic mix. In this episode we'll be discussing rural life in all its forms, from farming through to country estates. Chelford has both. This is one of those Cheshire villages where the county's farming heritage is more obvious than most, but it's perhaps a little less so than it was a few years back. I'm talking about the livestock market, of course, which is now gone, and with it went a tradition stretching back more than a century. Chelford can be split into two distinct areas, one around a roundabout where the A537 meets the A535, and the other a brand new housing estate off the A537 to the north of the local railway station. We shall refer to these two areas as the Old Village and the New Village as we walk around. The Old Village has the church, seemingly a heck of a long way out of civilization, but its siting makes sense when you consider the watercourses nearby. It was built to the south of a crossroads in the late 1700s, which makes it younger than the village shop. Yes, you heard that right. Chelford can boast one of the oldest local shops in the country, which has been in business since 1705. On this walk we'll also talk about gold medal winning cyclists, the Dixon family, Chelford's link to county cricket, a former pub, the old livestock market, and the horrendous Chelford rail disaster in 1894. Let's go. As ever, let's start things off with the map of Chelford from 1900. Straight away you can see where the main nucleus of settlement was 125 years ago. It was here, at this crossroads. That crossroads is now a big roundabout where the A537 meets the A535. Many of the buildings shown there have gone, but one or two historic ones do remain. South of it you can see the church, built close to something called Chelford Bridge. West of that is a huge area of parkland belonging to Astle Hall. Most of that is still the same now. Clearly also marked is the school, seen here north of the crossroads. Chelford still has a school, but it's not based in that building anymore. In addition, there was a secondary area to the north on the other side of the Crewe to Manchester railway line. It was little more than a few straggling houses and a pub, but it's much different now. You can see there was a cricket ground in that area too. That now has housing on it, as do the fields to the immediate north and west of the station. Our first task is to take a look at that parkland. If you drive into Chelford from Snelson, you pass by its entrance gates. Mostly, the landscape of this area hasn't changed since 1900, but Astle Hall itself most definitely has. Now demolished, it was a former country house associated with the Dixon baronets. Only its parkland and its former lodge survive to the present day. Arguably, though, this was the most important property in the parish. Astle Hall was built in the middle of the 18th century by John Parker on the site of an older dwelling called Milne House. John Parker's granddaughter, Lydia, married a man called John Dixon in 1784. Their son was Henry Dixon, who purchased the estate in 1833. The hall would therefore come into the possession of the Dixon family, a name which we'll see all over Chelford. Henry's son, Colonel Sir George Dixon, born in 1824, was created the first Baronet Dixon in 1919. He was succeeded by several Dixon baronets, and the title still exists today. The hall came into George's possession after the death of his father in 1838. George was a military man. He joined the army at 17 and served in the King's Own Borderers for 13 years. Astle was a large and roomy house situated in a well-wooded park. It was described by George Ormerod in his 1819 History of the County as a handsome and spacious edifice. The hall originally had a symmetrical neoclassical design, a style recorded in many artworks and photographs. At some point in the early 20th century, the house was remodelled and given a stucco finish. For a time, though, the original old timber frame fabric at the back of the house remained in situ. In 1926, the house was bought by a Mr. R.S. Provis and was converted into a nursing home. That was its last known use. By 1988, images of the hall bore no resemblance to those early ones. It looked to all intents and purposes like one of the service wings, suggesting the main hall had been pulled down. It wasn't long after that Astle Hall was left derelict. It was demolished towards the end of the 20th century, leaving only the parkland and the lodge behind. The parkland's landscaper was John Webb. It's flat, features a woodland garden and the remnants of the hall's formal and kitchen gardens. A short distance away from the house was a large lake, an artificial, man-made piece of water maybe, but convincing enough to pass as natural. The lake is still there. It has a Grade 2 listed semicircular weir or dam dating from around 1874. The lake itself and the kitchen garden date from between 1769 and 1799. The park is still very much used. Every year it hosts the annual Astle Park Traction Engine Rally, one of Cheshire's biggest steam and vintage events. It features huge displays and exhibits from all over the UK, and not just traction engines either. If you're a car nut, you'll like this too. There are vintage and classic vehicles including cars, commercials, Land Rovers, motorcycles, tractors, military vehicles and various working displays. The whole thing is complemented by fun fairs, a falconry and children's inflatables. There are various catering outlets and trade stands to browse too. With on-site camping, live music in the licensed bar and an amazing firework display, Astle Park each and every August really does come alive. Our next area is immediately east of Astle Hall's parkland, and this is where our main walk will begin, at St John's Church, sited on a former chapel according to this map. North of it you can see Chelford Bridge and a complex of buildings surrounding the Manor House. Otherwise, sporadic housing and plenty of trees, this area is practically the same today. Chelford's church, dedicated to St John the Evangelist, is not an easy one to photograph owing to the proximity of several trees. That said, it's still a great building to visit. Grade 2 listed, it's an Anglican parish church in the Diocese of Chester, the Archdeaconry of Macclesfield and the Deanery of Knutsford. It's believed that there was a medieval church on this site, but the current one was built between 1774 and 1776, although the tower was added later in 1840. The medieval building was likely a timber-framed chapel and probably looked a lot different to this. In comparison, you could describe this as a plain brick box with slightly pointy windows. Made of brick with stone dressings and a slate roof, its plan consists of a nave, a chancel and a west tower with a recessed spire. The spire is octagonal, covered with diamond-shaped slates and crowned by a weather vane. The west front of the tower has an arched doorway and a clock face. Interiorly, there's some 18th century furniture, including the box pews. It has a gallery, but that's no longer used as such. It's been boxed in and converted into a meeting room. The pulpit, the altar rails and the choir stalls are Art Nouveau, designed by Percy Worthington and dating from 1903. There are windows commemorating the Great War, dating from 1920 and 1921. They were made by Morris & Co. In the tower are 6 bells from 1885, all cast by the Whitechapel Bell Foundry. There have been some interesting memorials within this one, including 2 wooden painted ones for women named Dorothy, Baskerville and Jodrell. In the churchyard is the grave of 5-time world champion cyclist Reg Harris, OBE, who lived from 1920 to 1992. He won 2 Olympic gold medals, was twice Britain's Sportsman of the Year, and was a world record holder to boot. It all sounds pretty good, except this church is currently not in a good state, and it's deteriorating fast. Last year, it was estimated it needs around £330,000 to undergo repairs. Services here stopped in winter 2021 when a leak was found in its central heating oil tank. The Church of England's environmental policies meant it couldn't be fixed. Then, a year later, a burst water pipe damaged the fabric of the building as well as baptismal rolls, which are important public documents. Concerned the building was going downhill fast, a group of parishioners formed the Friends of Chelford Church in July 2023. Since then, they've been fundraising to fix the heating and lobbying the diocese to decide the church's fate soon. Time to head up Holmes Chapel Road and cross Chelford Bridge. This will take us towards the Manor House. Chelford Manor House is a timber-framed building dating from the early 17th century. It sits just to the southeast of the roundabout on the A537. An extension was made to it in 1671 and more alterations and additions were carried out in the 19th and 20th centuries. The last addition was made for Colonel Dixon of Astle Hall. Considered a complex building, the house is a Grade 2 listed structure, as is a former tithe barn, literally next door. That too is timber-framed with some brick infill. You know, I put my coat on to start this episode and now the sun's starting to come out. I can see patches of blue sky, which means I'm going to have to carry this around the entire room. That's not a good idea, but it's a long way back to the car from here. So we've come over Chelford Bridge and we have found our way to this roundabout. Now this next section is all about the old part of Chelford, because this is where it was. Now we've reached the centre of the old village. Back in 1900, you can see this was a crossroads where 5 lanes all met each other. Now it's a big roundabout, not a crossroads. Some of the buildings shown here have gone, like the old smithy for example. A lot do remain, including the Chelford corner shop and the vicarage, or parsonage as it's referred to here. North of the centre you can see the former school, somewhat isolated. Not marked is Chelford's cricket ground. It's located here on what used to be part of Astle Hall's parkland. Let's have a look at the cricket club to begin this area. Chelford, as a village, has had associations with cricket for almost 150 years. In fact, Chelford was once the place where Cheshire County Cricket Club played their home games. They never played on this ground though. I'll show you where they did later. Chelford Cricket Club as we know it today was set up in 1948 on this, the present ground. This was previously a wilderness of long, dank grass overgrown with things like thistles. A pavilion was built in 1965 and the scorebox was added in 1990. One reason why the club has been so successful would be the influence of the Potts family. Stan Potts was the team's first captain in 1948. His brother Fred, his wife Dorothy and their son David were all instrumental in the club's early days. David was an outstanding opening batsman and wicketkeeper. Under his guidance, a junior team was set up and was very successful, once representing Cheshire in the national under-15s competition. You're probably looking at this ground and wondering a few things. It doesn't look very appealing, does it? As successful as it was, and indeed is, the club is currently on long-term hiatus. The Parish Council are, though, looking into the possibility of a restart by gathering support from individuals who may be interested in helping run it again. I think this is something the village would benefit from, especially as it used to be such a successful club. Chelford's cricketing fortunes at present, though, are in a state of limbo. In front of the cricket ground is the Chelford Corner Shop, a fully independent and locally owned business committed to offering the highest level of service to its customers. It offers what every local shop should. It sells locally made artisan bread, fruit and vegetables, and wines and spirits, including local craft beer and gin. There are also locally sourced and branded groceries, household supplies, pet food, and so much more. So what makes this one so special, you ask? It's just a shop, right? No, Chelford Corner Shop has a claim to fame. It's one of the oldest known shops in the entire country. It's been in business continuously since 1705. On the other side of the roundabout is the old vicarage, late 17th century and made of whitewashed brick. It's another Grade 2 listed building. Crossing the roundabout takes us to the Petrol Station, which sits on the site of the old smithy. As well as fuel, this also offers various other services to motorists these days. It has a shop, a car wash and a toilet, whilst food and drinks offerings include Costa Express coffee and Deli by Shell. It's all very bland and modern. I'd rather use the corner shop. So this is the old school. The building closed its doors to pupils in 1999, but the school is still going. It moved away to new premises elsewhere in Chelford. We'll see where in a bit. The old school, built in 1754, remained the property of the Diocese of Chester until it was put on the market for private sale. The school site actually consists of two buildings, one the main school and the other a cottage designed for the head teacher. The building went for sale by formal tender, which means prospective buyers have to pay a 10% deposit with their offer after conditions are specified. Up the side of the school is a track that runs into the modern village. Let's follow this now. It runs under the Crewe to Manchester railway line and ends up on Dixon Drive. I don't really know what to expect from this path, quite frankly, because before I came here today, I read online somewhere that after it's been raining, this can be a bit boggy. Well, at the minute, it's okay. It's fairly dry underfoot, so my feet are safe at the moment. What this path does is it goes underneath the railway line that we saw in the Snelson episode, and then it runs into the main body of Chelford, if you like, where most of the people live these days. The path we've just used has been there for years. It's shown on this old map. As you can see here, it once led to a series of fields. Of all the areas in Chelford, this is the one that's changed the most since 1900. The area in this big circle is now a huge housing estate. This is also where you can find the school these days, as well as a park in this general area here, marked on this map as Mere Lee. Although this has always been one of the larger villages in Cheshire ever since the 1780s, it's completely unrecognisable from how it was back then. According to census data in the mid-1860s, Chelford had a population of just over 260. Today, that figure is astronomical in comparison. It now has well over 1,500. A raft of housing has come along within the last few decades, vastly expanding the village. In effect, what this has done too is shift the nucleus of the place away from its old former centre. With the exception of the areas we've already seen, almost all inhabitants of the village live on this one huge estate, where the only way in or out is via the A537. This is mostly housing, so let's wander around it in a big loop, and it will take us towards the main road via a few points of interest. This is Chelford Park, alternatively known as Merecourt Park or the Merecourt Play Area. It's a nice little spot and takes its name from the actual mere you can find here. Don't confuse this park with Chelford Water Park. That's something else, which we'll cover in a future episode because it's to do with a quarry outside of the parish boundaries. Now we're at the school, which opened in 1999 to replace the old one we saw earlier. Work began on building this in late 1998, 25 years after the parish councillors first came up with the idea for it. It was financed by something called the Capital Challenge Funding after a joint bid for the cash by Chelford Parish and Cheshire County Councils. Despite the size of Chelford, the school remains small and retains a rural feeling. That said, it is expanding. In 2018, an additional classroom was added to accommodate the growing population. So yeah, aside from the school and the park that we walk through there, it's just really a lot of housing in Chelford these days. Now we will be back into the housing estate in a few minutes time because there is something else that we need to catch on our way back down to the start, but that's close to the railway station. We'll talk about that in a bit. Our next job is to head out onto the A537, which is at the end of this road here, and this will take us past the shop, and it will also take us past an old pub as well. Now to concentrate on the area along the Nutsford Road, the A537. There's a lot to talk about in this section. The biggest landmark here was by far the Dixon Arms Hotel. What's there these days is a little different. Note the railway station too. That's shown here with a series of sidings because it once had a goods yard. Those sidings were a key part of the Chelford rail disaster in 1894 and later important for the old livestock market. This area also had the old cricket ground and a series of other small buildings, which we'll cover while we're here too. As we know, Chelford has a very old shop and a petrol station, but this new centre of the village has its own shops. This here is a Londis store. It occupies the former Chelford greengrocer's premises as part of a franchise agreement. It's been in business here since 2019. The shop is owned by Karthik Marimuthu from Macclesfield. As we know, Chelford's heart has always been in agriculture. This is Chelford Farm Supplies. Established 50 years ago, it's a family-owned and run business that opened its doors in 1975. Initially, it focused on supplying the agricultural community around here with dairy chemicals, medicines and animal feed. It's a bit more than that now. Over time, the company has expanded its product range to include equestrian clothing and footwear, as well as general farm supplies, garden and forest machinery, and saddlery. They're known for being the best stock saddlery in the Northwest, and for offering top brands at competitive prices. That has helped Chelford Farm Supplies' reputation as one of Cheshire's largest suppliers of farming, equestrian, and machinery products. This is a block of flats called Dixon Court. Its name references the Dixon family, but it's also a nod to the building that used to occupy this site, the Dixon Arms. The Dixon Arms was a coaching inn. It was known for its ballroom, its meat curing business, and even brewing its own beer. It was built in around 1840 and was a thriving pub 150 years ago. The pub also played a part in a tragic event, acting as a temporary morgue after the Chelford rail disaster in 1894. More on that shortly. The Chelford Players, a local drama group, also started within the pub's walls before moving to the village hall later. There also used to be a bowling green behind this pub too. In 1997, it witnessed some of the most bizarre scenes in political history when the Tatton Conservative Association adopted disgraced Neil Hamilton as their candidate to take on Martin Bell. The Dixon Arms was the only pub in Chelford, although you could argue that the Egerton Arms in Martle is so close that it should count. It closed in 2003 and became these 22 apartments. Next to the old pub is a housing estate called Cricketers Green, and the clue is very much in the name. This is where the old cricket ground once was, the one used by Cheshire County Club. An early celebrity of the county club was Thomas Nixon, born in Nottingham in 1815. He came to Chelford from Oxford in 1857 and set up a cricketing outfitters business. He was already famous in cricketing circles, having previously developed leg guards, cane-handled bats, and one of the first ever bowling machines. He died in 1877 and he's buried in Chelford. When the county club moved away from the village in 1882, the ground was used by the gentlemen of Cheshire until the Ministry of Food took over the site in World War II. Cricket would never return to this part of the village. The old cricket ground today is a raft of houses, but the name of the area still remembers its past, associated with leather and willow. Chelford was, until recently, a well-known place thanks to its huge cattle market. It was held every Monday for over a century. The market is actually still going though. It was merged with Right Manley before its owner moved operations to Middlewich. That happened when the lease for its former site here in Chelford expired in 2015. The market was founded in 1911, operating continuously on the same site since its inception. It became one of the largest and busiest auction centres in the UK, employing nearly 50 people. The market has also had a reputation for the sale of poultry, going back to the immediate post-war days when imported Irish geese were unloaded directly off trains into the Chelford sale yard. Permission was granted by Cheshire East Council to build 86 homes on the site of the former market, and that's what you can see here now. Let's walk through this to the railway station. Chelford railway station is an intermediary stop on the Crewe to Manchester line. Sited just over 14 miles north of Crewe, it's roughly midway between the two major locations. It was opened by the Manchester and Birmingham Railway in 1842. It had its own engine shed at one point, but that was demolished in around 1880. The station was rebuilt in 1960 by William Robert Headley, the architect to the London Midland section of British Rail. It's remained the same ever since mainly, except it no longer has its goods yard. Northern trains provide an hourly service in each direction between Manchester Piccadilly and Crewe, with several that stop at either Stockport or Manchester Airport. Chelford Station is well known for another reason, an accident that happened just before Christmas in 1894 involving a high-sided freight wagon. The wagon was blown by a strong wind into violent contact with other wagons close by, causing one of them to overturn and block the main line. An express train travelling between London Euston and Manchester would then collide with the overturned wagon. It was being pulled by two locomotives named Zygia and Express. Zygia fell on her side whilst her tender ran up on the platform ramp. Express remained upright, but the first carriage demolished the front of the Chelford signal box. In all, 14 passengers were killed and 48 were injured in the smash. The somewhat galling thing is, though, that the incident could potentially have been avoided. After the wagon had derailed and overturned, the station master ran towards the express waving a red lamp, warning it to stop, or at least slow down. However, the drivers thought he was signalling to the wagon shunters and didn't reduce speed. One has to wonder if they were going slower, would fatalities have been avoided? The inquiry afterwards had little comment to make as it seemed to be a freak accident. It did advise though that in the future, the brakes of all shunted wagons should be immediately pinned down.
Well, I'm glad the weather stayed nice for this because Chelford looks fantastic, doesn't it? I've absolutely enjoyed every single step of this walk. We've still got one last little bit to cover, and it's the bit between the railway station and the big roundabout where the corner shop is. This section will cover the village hall.
Here's our last area, which involves walking along the rest of the A537 back towards the old village. On here, it's just a series of fields and a few trees. That's not the case now. The last stop on the walk is the village hall, midway between the station and the roundabout. It was opened in July 1908 on land donated by Colonel Dixon. The hall offers a mixture of modern facilities within a glorious setting, making it the ideal venue for weddings, parties and other communal events. It's made up of three key areas. The main function room can accommodate up to 160 people, whilst the smaller Dixon room is a more intimate space that can hold 40. Lastly, there's a recently upgraded kitchen with its own seating area. They're all on one level, with wheelchair-friendly access and disabled facilities. It's all available to hire 7 days a week by both individuals and organisations. It's just the way any decent village hall should operate. And folks, we have made the trip back to the start and we're done with Chelford. What a great village and thoroughly enjoyable all ends up. We have one more to see this weekend, and for that we need to work our way down the A537 towards Macclesfield. Get ready for more property associated with the landed gentry. just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.